I'd call the meeting of the Prudential Committee here at Summit Street School on February 8th at 3:30 in the afternoon. And it's great to see all these faces out here. So the first thing is to see if there's any visitors or staff to be heard other
You
than...
gotta amend the agenda first, I believe.
Oh, we have an amendment.
Yeah.
12/7 meeting.
Ben sent us, hold on. It is, man, am I not organized? You have to add an issuance of employment contracts. And I'm assuming that's under consent agenda.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we're going to amend the consent agenda to include an issuance of employment contracts, plural?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I didn't see that. Did that just come today?
Maybe
It came
yesterday.
on Friday.
Oh, okay. All right.
Leave of absence.
Oh, thank God you're here. I didn't see you.
Yeah.
So there's an additional one?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not Thursday or Friday.
Okay. So I can change that to absences. All right. Any other amendments?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
That's the only one.
Okay, excellent. All right. So I've got those two noted on the consent agenda. Then we can go into visitor staff to be heard, which I think there wasn't any. And we are all set then for Suzanne to give us a presentation on principal's reports.
Welcome to Summit Street School. I enjoyed giving Marla a tour of the office. If you haven't had a tour of the office, Jason comes here all the time, but welcome to stay and have a tour afterwards. I'm really excited to have all of our Summit Street School staff with us today, and some fine Summit Street School third graders who will also be presenting. I thought it was important that you all look at our action plans and look at our data and to see what's behind the numbers that go into the action plans, how we deliver that curriculum. We move from the delivery of that curriculum to assessing where our students are at, to moving it to those final numbers that you see on the action plan. So we have 4 grade levels, teacher teams that will present different pieces of the Bridges curriculum. The Bridges curriculum, of course, is our K-5 curriculum that is our first year of implementation. The implementation is big. When the boxes arrived last June, for those, I see some smiles on the faces, the boxes went from one side of the hallway here all the way down to the other with curriculum materials, whether they are physical manipulatives or workbooks that students worked with, an immense amount of professional development. And in addition to just the professional development, the teacher colleagueship to work on those programs and teach the programs in line with each other within their grade levels and in line moving students from grade to grade. And with this is there are specific things that are in the K2 curriculum, and then there are things that move through the 3-5 curriculum, which gave us a great opportunity last June for our third grade teachers to work with Fleming, and you will see a specific piece to the third grade curriculum tonight with our third graders that they will also work on in 4th and 5th grade as well. So that structure works well with our particular K3 and 4-5 structure, because students have their sort of the K2 experience, they move on to the third experience, and gives us, I think, a really good segue into 4th and 5th grade at Fleming. We're not going in grade order today because we wanted to go sort of in a more logical program with what teachers are presenting. We're going to have staff actually present from this area right here. So after the second grade teachers go, we're just going to slide those chairs down so that other staff are able to be right here. And then when we have our student group come up, our third grade, we're going to need to move on a little bit. So our second grade is going to start with Number Corner right now and talk a little bit about the structure of this and then how we move through assessment from Number Corner.
All right. Welcome to Summit Street School. I'm Sue Philippek.
Megan Turcott.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about Number Corner. Number Corner is one small aspect of Bridges, and it's probably takes us about 15 minutes of our day, and we kind of choose where we're going to fit it in. Some of us do it during morning meeting time, some of us do it at the beginning of math time, sometimes we find another block of time. And the purpose of Number Corner is it focuses around our classroom calendars that changes every month, and there's usually particular focuses and skills to address. For example, this month, one of the things they asked us to address was story word problems. And we had given a Number Corner assessment in January, and after we gave it to all of our students, we sat down as a team and we saw a couple of things that came through from that assessment. One of the things that came through was during story problems, besides just giving the correct answer, they had to show their work or show their thinking, they had to give a number model, they had to label the answer. Coming up with the answer usually wasn't so much as a problem as it was the other pieces, showing their thinking. So we decided that was going to be our big push for this month of February, not so much how much red was in the flags of the calendar. Is it more or less than half of red? We decided that wasn't a key point. And the other part was fact fluency, that when we gave that assessment, fact fluency, the Number Corner Bridges assessment wanted them to be up in the somewhere between, say, 16 to 20 facts in a minute. So we decided, okay, we looked through their February assessments through Number Corner, and there's a lot of pieces to do with that because they're supposed to use their doubles facts, they're supposed to use their make 10 facts, which is, you know, if you have 7 and 3, that would be a make 10 fact. If you have 4 and 6, that would be a make 10 fact. Or the doubles plus 1, which would be 7 add 7 is 14, therefore you know 7 add 8 is 15, and how to explain that thinking. So this is, every month we have to make something that goes with our calendar cards. And this is this month's calendar grid assessment. So we printed out the problems large enough that we can meet all together at floor space. And again, showing the number model sentence in different ways, but also showing the thinking. It could be with a picture, it could be even with the number line jumps. So that's kind of where we are in that.
And with this, we keep these up in our classrooms, so it's a daily reminder. I think some classrooms do it on the smart board and pull it up every day. But for our kids, knowing that writing equations and showing their work is something they really need to work on, this is up for them every single day. They also are recognizing patterns, so on the date that it corresponds with, so if it's the 2nd, they were using the number 2, on the 3rd, 33. So they start to recognize patterns as well. All the problems that are squared, they're figuring out, is it the answer that they're looking for? Is it the missing addend? So just having a daily reminder every day and using the language. And you can see here that in all is underlined, so talking about the language that's used. So they really get a good visual with this.
And then I just brought a few examples of their Number Corner books that aren't necessarily used every day, but it has the computational fluency, it has skills like time telling, money counting, finding arrays, skip counting within patterns. So kind of highlights what they are working on.
What grades are these?
This is second.
We're going to transition now to Number Corner in first grade. I'm going to ask the second grade teachers if they want to move, and I'm just going to slip these chairs away. And if you're kind of hearing, we're hearing some direct instruction in math class time. You're hearing the morning calendar time. Bridges operates off an 80-minute a day. So 80 minutes out of a school day is a lot to carve out. And you'll see math repetitively through the school day. And I'm sure first grade will talk about that more with their Number Corner.
We're the first grade team.
I'm Rachel Manns.
Dave Neal.
Donna Hall
We've got our 2 student teachers, Mr. Mag and Ms. Coogan.
for joining us.
So in first grade, the Number Corner, like the second grade, revolves around the calendar. There's 5 parts of the Number Corner. There's the calendar grid,
the calendar collector. So we collect something each month. We might collect Unifix cubes or pattern blocks. For November and December, we collected an hour each day until we had 24 hours. We count the days in school on 100 grids, and we use those 100 grids to build computational fluency. Computational fluency is another part, so we look at 10 frames and double 10 frames, and that's building those math facts that the second grade talked about. And we do a number line every day, so we look at different decades of numbers. So we looked at the 20s, the 30s, now we're up to the 90s. So those are the 5 different parts of Number Corner.
And for the assessments, one of the things that happens for us is that we started in the fall with an assessment for all students. We were able, since we have planning time, which is really helpful, we sat down with all our students, took a look at what we saw, and we were able to focus on children who needed remedial, children who needed enrichment. We have 4 ongoing assessments that will go through the course of the year. We just finished our January assessments. We sat down, we've looked at boys and girls who have made gains, boys and girls who are holding the line, and some boys and girls who may need some remedial. So we're looking at ways to implement that now. What's really nice is that it enables us to really stay ahead of what's happening with our class and classes. And because of our time where we're able to meet together, we can sit down and look at all students and come up with a plan, which we've been using. And so that's our plan for the rest of the year. And I think it's really going to show as boys and girls go to second grade and have had a year of this program and the assessments that follow them, that it's going to make a transition for math to second grade, we hope, really succinct, and boys and girls will understand what's happening.
There's a few pieces of it that we really, we've come to appreciate so far. First one probably is back to that spiral effect, in which we work with a variety of concepts all the time, but particularly in the calendar part of it, we go through sequences where we started with just some basic counting, and then we went into geometry. We're back at geometry at a more advanced state in this particular one. We had number equations as a play off of the simple counting. So throughout the course of the year, our actual numbers, the calendar days, have a specific skill associated with them for the month. And so that spiral effect has really been positive for us in terms of, we work on a variety of things in the actual Bridges program, but with a Number Corner, we're talking about some of those skills on a regular basis, and we keep revisiting them. Just about the time when, kids are starting to forget about the geometry part, boom, geometry is on the calendar every day. We really, we think that's a strength of this particular program. We're really excited that we're able to differentiate, because Number Corner becomes one of those places where we can, challenge kids at whatever level they're at. So if there's a kid who's struggling a little bit, we're able to bring down a number equation or counting skills or things like that to help them be successful if they're the ones who are in front of the group today, leading Number Corner, because it's student-led every day. But if it's someone who's really needs challenges, we're able to challenge them as well. And an example of that might be we write equations daily for whatever the number of the day is. So today's number was the 102nd day of school, and so we had kids who gave us number equations that were, 102 plus 0, which was, a concept that we worked on earlier in the year, plus 0 skills. As well as we had kids who gave us 10 times 10 in parentheses plus 2 equals 102. So we're able to, really differentiate in there and challenge kids at wherever they're at to give us, their math thinking. And then I think the third thing that we've been really appreciative of with Number Corner is just that, and I think Ms. Turcott had said it earlier, was that it gives us a chance every day to have math language conversations. So every day, I've probably said the word number equation more times this year than I have in entire years gone by. Because it's something that we talk about every single day. We talk about equations. We talk about greater than, less than. We talk about more and less. We talk a variety of math language every day in a pretty scripted part, but also in a pretty natural flow, which is just great because kids have started to pick up and have so much math language at their disposal now that we just think has really been a boon for our first graders. So those are just some things about Number Corner that we appreciate and that we talk about on a regular basis in our team meetings.
Thank you.
And as the kindergarten is getting ready, as you can see that there are a lot of places where you can highlight the program's rigor, the accessibility of the program, and I think you'll see in the next two presentations a lot of the student engagement that the program brings for us. I also wanted to point out our learning specialists when Mrs. Hall talked about intervention. Bridges also comes with intervention materials, and in our first year, we're getting really good at high-quality first instruction for Bridges while using intervention materials as they seem appropriate. And we have, so they're not going to be speaking today, but they'll wave to you from the back, Mary Reynolds Wall, Regina Sewell, and our SLP, Stephanie O'Leary and Valerie Green, who also are interacting on a daily basis with the Bridges program with students. And then I'll have our kindergarten teachers. Kim Hamilton couldn't be with us today. We have a third, though, with our student teacher who will introduce herself.
I'm Kyla Paul, the student teacher in Miss Mahoney's classroom. Carrie Mahoney.
Maria Lorenz.
We're going to talk a little bit about the math workplaces, which these are opportunities for students to visit different math places or stations throughout the room. After a whole group lesson, you might teach them one of the activities as a whole group, and then they would go off and do them throughout the room. Some of the times teachers elect to have the students keep a clipboard where they need to be responsible for visiting each station each week. Other times teachers keep track of it on a chart like this, usually with the lower grades, so this is a really big chart. But one of the things that they have about 6 workplaces that they visit throughout the week. And right now, I think it's important to, as all of my colleagues were talking, it reminded me, part of the PNOA assessment we used to have did not assess geometry. And geometry is a huge part of the Bridges, so that's a great added piece this year. So we happen to be working on 2D and 3D shapes, and right now some of the workplace stations around 2D shapes are circles and square, race you to 20, spin and count the shapes, hungry caterpillar, geoboard shapes and spinners and graphing activities, and then pattern block design. During their workplaces, the assessments are, we have a lot of observational assessments, so that allows us to sit with the children and gauge pretty quickly what kinds of things that they're doing well, what kinds of things they need extra practice, so we can change the course of action just by actually meeting with them individually. Also, some of the days we tell them we need to do paper pencil assessments, so this is completely independent, so we call them up and we'll do counting activities or dice activities and things with them. So this is a sample of what the board looks like, and the students have their name cards where they can visit the stations each day of the week. About 2 to 3 stations a day they can visit depending on the time, and some of the stations are independent, and some of the stations they do with a partner. So Kyla's going to talk about a partner station. The shapes that are on the container all match areas around the room, so they can quickly access that and go and visit where their work math place is. So. Yes, so we chose to share with you the Hungry Caterpillar game. One of the great aspects of Bridges is that it includes a lot of literary focus as well, so it's just any place we can double dip with literacy and math, we're going to do it, especially at this young age. So this game is tied into The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle, which right away, the students have read this, they've read it at home, they've read it at school, they know this book, and it's just another way to include literacy, get their interest going on this game, and then they have a story. They automatically know, oh, I know the rules to this game. This caterpillar is eating these shapes. So they have a spinner, and they work together to spin. They have hopefully they have their own spinner. We learned that was usually a better option. And they get the shape, and they're working to fill up these hexagons. And another skill we're learning is they have to fill it up exactly. So if they have them all filled except one small green shape, if they get a red trapezoid,
they have to spin again next turn to make sure they fill it all up completely. So not only are they working on these great geometry skills, tying in the literacy, but they're also learning social skills with working together, which is a big thing we often have to go back to, more so even than the shapes.
I have an independent game to play. There are some different pattern block designs, and the children get to pick one and build it on here with the pattern blocks. And then after they get to graph what they used. So there's record sheets in here, and they have to tell how many hexagons they used, how many rhombuses, how many squares and trapezoids. And then they have to decide which one is the greatest, which one they use the most, and they circle it and they cross out the one that they use the least. So they get to be a little bit creative and then still get the graphing and the shapes in. Thank you. So you try to get the picture of the direct instruction, the structured investigation, the open exploration part to the program, and our very exciting time that we have our third grade students who we get to see what does, I think one of the other things that the teachers have worked very hard on is asking those really important math questions that move student learning forward, and you are going to see some of the product of that with student-led forums with the third grade. All right, so. I know, hi back here. Yeah, oh, sorry, third grade team. I'm Jean Cole.
I'm Timothy Bergstrom.
I'm Elizabeth Pacey, and these are some of our lovely third graders joining us.
Thank you for coming, guys. So one of the best things about Bridges in third grade is that it really honors the students, not only as learners, but as teachers. And so one of the great things that we do in third grade is we hold these math forums. So after they have been learning about a particular concept, we'll give them a question and we'll have them work on it. And they're working on different models, different strategies. They're solving it sometimes with partners, sometimes on their own. And then we as teachers are being researchers, and we're walking around and we're noticing how are they solving these problems. And inside we're doing formative assessment and we're thinking where are they versus additive reasoning, moving into multiplicative reasoning on a continuum of efficiency. And then we select maybe 3 or 4 kids to come up and share their strategies in front of the whole class. And they have to be pretty brave to do this. Because one of our practice standards is being able to explain your math thinking to others and to be able to critique math reasoning of others. So that means that everyone has a job to ask questions and learn from one another. So they don't just sit there and say, that's a nice strategy. They have to say, how did you get that number? Why did you decide to do a ratio table instead of doing loops and groups? They're asking really sophisticated questions, and we get to just sit back and watch and know formatively, ooh, this child's at, where they are, and this is how we're going to nudge them to the next step. And then they're actually doing it on their own. Other kids are saying, wow, that was a much faster way to do it. I'm going to try that strategy next time. So we wanted our third graders to share some of the different strategies that they've come up with. And then we make a big poster as a reference that's always up on the wall so kids can go back to that thinking and try to stretch themselves with a new strategy.
So this entire poster is solving 6 times 7. Something else I just wanted to point out was starting to put variables in equations. So anytime we're writing an equation, we often write a letter or something. Like if this one was, we think toys. This was stretching a little far back, but the T I think stood for toys. So just that pre-algebra already in the beginning of third grade, which I thought was really cool. So Adam, do you want to start explaining how you solve 6 times 7?
Yeah, just say what you did.
This is repeated addition. You would go 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7. Then add those. 14 plus 14 plus 14. Then 30 plus 12 equals whatever you got.
You can just go right to the end, Adam, and then we'll just keep coming up. Lily's way?
The way I decided to do it is I decided to do a ratio table, and you have how many groups you have, and then you have to count by whatever you're counting by until you get the answer. The way how I did it was I skip counted by 6s. So if I did 6 times 7, I would count by the first number, which is 6, then I would do it 7 times because it's 6 times 7. The way I did it was I put 6 groups of 7, and I added 2 7s, which equaled 14. Then I added 2 more and another group, and then I added the 10s, which equaled 30, and then I added the 4s, and I got 42. So my way, so how I solved the problem was, so I already used a fact that I knew, so I did 6 times 6 equals 36, and then since I had one more 6, I did 6 times 1 equals 6, so 36 plus 6 equals 42.
And then Macy had to step out, but I think it's really important to talk about the number line because that's a big piece of 3rd grade. We do number lines for everything and anything. So she just did 6 jumps of 7 to get to the 42. So, yeah.
Another thing we ask kids to do a lot during the forums is compare the strategies. What similarities do you notice? What's the difference? Which one would be the most efficient? And then we, encourage them to push themselves to that next level. What's a new one you're going to try now that we've seen all these different ways? So kind of build on each other.
And I guess the cool thing is, so we do name them based on whose strategy. So this is this is Lily S's way.
Mm-hmm.
So when kids are like, oh, I'm going to try Adam's way today or whatever. So it gives them that ownership over, that's their strategy. So.
And it's not always just which strategy is the best one, but which one is the most efficient for this set of numbers. And so depending on the set of numbers, 3rd graders will say, I think this is the best strategy for this set of numbers. I think maybe today it's this one. So it really helps them be more flexible mathematicians.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Are you allowed to ask questions of the children?
Yeah, sure. 3rd graders, could you hold on just a moment? There's a question. If you guys want to just come right back here, just you can stand right here for a moment. They're great question answers.
Do you really like math? You do.
I even heard, and I don't know if it's one of these 5 that are here now, but I heard that in Village Kids at the start, when they were putting the snack out, does this sound familiar? Were any of you guys around about the apple? No, none of them. That as soon as they put the apples out, and then they needed to have 60 there, that the students were saying, that is a 9x5 array. That 9x5 array is 45, and that they were all correcting the Village Kids staff that a 9x5 array is not going to make enough apples for Village Kids. Anyone else have any other questions for 3rd graders?
No.
Thank
Did a great job.
I think and I won't take any more time, but another really important note is this is a really, really big year when it comes to curriculum. I am very thankful for the Summit Street School staff that has taken on. We are year 2, we did writing last year when we came to the Prudential Committee, talked about it. So we're really sort of in year 2 implementation of Writers Workshop. This is our year 1 of Readers Workshop. We are very, very actively engaged in implementing reading as well and implementing reading intervention strategies. You want Kathy Duggan here, who is our Learning Center librarian. We did a very big project where the Tuesday before December break, that sort of right before the break day here, how many books did we check out of this library?
It's like 1,500.
1,500. We provided every student with we did an initiative on how to read a story based off a popular book, How to Read a Story, and put the sort of directions on how you read a story to somebody else. Created a bag for everybody with a special bookmark, and all of a large collection of staff. The library was transformed more into your library shopping world here. There's some festive lights, and we worked all day with classes to move 1,500 books out of here in the library. And of course, the important thing is, what do we do with these books? And each student went home with 5 to 7 books, and seven books and reading logs specific to K1 reading logs and second and third grade reading logs to get students reading every single day over break. And we felt that it was really important that the books didn't stay inside the building for break, but that the books were actively read every day during breaks. And this is one of my favorite parts of 2016 is it was an unexpectedly cold day on that Monday in January when we came back from break, and it was a below zero wind chill day, so we were in the gym on the first day back from morning arrival. And as students arrived and saw each other for the first time in the gym, it wasn't the talk about what gifts did you get of Christmas break. All anybody wanted to know from each other was how many books did you read, how many minutes did you read, what book did you get, what picture book did you read over break, because many of them read they had some just right books at their reading levels. They had books that would be really great for somebody to read to them as well, and some stretching books for them as well. And students were very engaged in that conversation. We didn't start that conversation. They arrived, they're taking off their snow pants, and they're talking about how many minutes did you read, how many books, and that was a really great start to our January. But all that hard work comes from the staff here to make that engagement happen. The Reader's Workshop, Writer's Workshop, and Bridges is a huge undertaking, and I have enjoyed all the rich conversations that they have with each other at grade levels, the constant discussion about what's going on in their day, in their classrooms, and how we're going to provide services for students. And with that, and just I think one other person over there, Rosalind, raise your hand. Our PBIS coordinator and PE teacher, Rosalind, are also here. Did we introduce everybody else that was here? We feel very lucky to have 6 student teachers in this building from UVM, St. Mike's undergraduate and graduate, which is really providing much needed energy and enthusiasm and expertise to our building that's appreciated by all of them. And with that, I know they have math to set up for tomorrow because it's a daily adventure to be set up for the next day for Bridges. So does anyone have any questions for the staff before they go? Or any staff have any questions?
I just want to compliment everybody. It's been a rough 2 or 3 years with the change of curriculum, and I haven't heard a whole lot of griping about it, and I just thank everybody for working so hard. And it has been difficult. I know the time it has taken you. So this is a good example of what came out of it, because I'm not here. I don't understand what you're going through. This shows me the steps. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Nice job, Summit.
Yeah. Okay, they're off. They have plenty to plan to do. Thank you very much for coming.
For your time.
That's good. Hey, one of those teachers was in school with my son. I can't, so I wrote myself a little note. Teachers are looking at her. Let me pull them out.
All right, you cleared the room. Yeah. Okay, next on our agenda is we need to approve the FY17 budgets. But prior to doing that, Grant Geisler has prepared a budget presentation for all to enjoy. So take it away, Grant.
All right. Well, good afternoon. And as the school board knows, this briefing represents the culmination of multiple budget work sessions and encompasses both the school district and recreation department. The board's guidance regarding the school district's general fund was to maintain educational quality, support school action plans, and to be sensitive to the burden on taxpayers, specifically by presenting a budget that was within the allowable growth limitation, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. For the capital plan, we needed to address high-priority projects and factor in the depletion of the capital reserve fund. For the rec department, we were asked to propose budgets that were constrained to a level tax rate. So this slide is a quick summary of the 4 budgets, and at a glance, you can see that the school district's budget is increasing by 1.4%. The capital plan uses a large amount of funds to accomplish roof replacements and proposes a $75,000 article for new tax revenue. The rec department budget is about $2.2 million and was limited to a level tax rate, and the capital plan was limited to 1 cent on the tax rate, which is also level with this year. And for the general fund, we're going to start with that for the school district. Like most years, there are some laws that impact budget development. This year's most significant issue was allowable growth. Act 46 last year established per pupil spending limits for every district in the state, and if a district went above that threshold, they would be double taxed. S-233 was recently passed, which amends Act 46. And what that did was several things that you can see bulleted on this chart. But the big thing is that it added 0.9% to every district's limit. For us, it wasn't that big of a deal because we were already below the original threshold. It also established the penalty at 40% instead of double tax. And it exempted districts that were already below the statewide average spending per pupil. Some of those facts are significant to us because even though we were below the threshold, S-233 is going to reduce the amount of revenue generated statewide. And so what that means is that we'll probably see tax rates increase statewide. And the way it'll be done is the base rates are going to be level at, well, not level, they actually changed a little bit, but the base tax rates for property is $1 and for income sensitivity is 2%. Those figures won't change. But what they can change is this new term that we're learning this year called dollar yield. So the way the tax rate is calculated is they'll take our per pupil spending and divide it by this dollar yield, and there's a different yield for property or income. The way the state can generate more money and increase tax rate is to drop those yields. So if the yields go down, tax rates will go up for everybody. Another change is that we were told in law what we have to say for budget articles. So budget article language is going to look a little different this year because we have to put it in terms of spending per pupil, not just the total dollar amount. And we have to show the percentage increase or decrease from the prior year. And also, not necessarily new for us because we've been moving towards universal pre-K, but universal pre-K is a requirement for all 3- and 4-year-olds. And based on our current participation, which really soared this year, we'll need to add about 40 slots in FY17 in order to make sure that we have universal access. And that's private preschool slots that we're talking about. So we had to add several slots, and as that last bullet points out, the statewide rate increased by $92. So to start with some context, we discussed allowable growth a little bit. As I mentioned, we were within the original threshold. Now that the threshold has been increased for everybody, we're well below that threshold. But the board, as you know, chose not to revisit or increase the budget because of the potential tax rate increase. And if we increased our budget, then that would just compound that effect. Equalized pupils, as you know, we have a very stable pupil count, which helps a lot with allowable growth because it's based on per pupil spending. So if districts have a declining enrollment, then already they're going to see increased per pupil spending because they have less pupils to divide by. Our fund balance went up significantly, which is favorable for the budget. Special education reimbursements and expenditures are down, and the net effect is favorable. And what I mean by that is expenses dropped by more than the reimbursements. So if your expenses are dropping more than your revenue, that's a good thing for the budget. Private preschool slots, I already mentioned, created a little bit of a challenge because of having to increase that. Technology was favorable because we were able to make some reductions there based on prior year investments. Long-term debt is paid off, but our bond defeasance revenue is depleted. So it's going to look like the budget decreased, but really the net effect is neutral because we lost revenue too. In the other category, we reduced budgets for supplies, books, travel, and equipment. But that sounds worse than it is because we actually just created the budgets more in line with what actual expenses were. So it wasn't really a reduction from what people are spending, it's a reduction in the budget. It does mean less flexibility and less potential for surplus, though. So looking at K through 8 enrollment, our projection is fairly stable at about 1,000. Most districts are declining dramatically, so we're in great shape considering what the statewide averages are looking like. We do see a little bit of a decline in the next few years, but once again, it's around 1,000, so we're pretty stable. And our equalized pupil count should be pretty stable too, because even though our numbers may be dropping a little bit for K through 8, because of the private preschool and being able to count preschool kids, that should maybe help stabilize it and bring those numbers back up a little bit. Budget overview slide. I mentioned before the total expense budget is only going up 1.4%, which is below what you would anticipate for an inflationary increase. A few lines down, you'll see the capital fund contribution. We're proposing a $75,000 article to balance the capital plan, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The second to the last line is the equalized pupil count, and you can see very stable, only a 0.22 reduction, which helped a lot. Our spending per pupil is about $14,713, which was a few dollars below the original threshold, but now that threshold is $14,848 with that additional 0.9. So we theoretically could have increased the budget by almost $146,000 and still been within the threshold. But as I mentioned, if we had done that and the dollar yields had dropped, tax rates would go up and then up even more because of that. So the board chose, and I think very wisely, to keep the budgets where we were. This pie chart just shows where the revenue sources are. About 95% of the revenue sources are considered state revenues, about 4% local, and about 1% federal in the form of Title I funds. Significant revenue changes are shown on this chart. The fund balance is up over $150,000 because it includes the balance of delinquent taxes, which were handed over to us by the town, and they are now carrying those delinquent taxes and collecting them. Tuition is up about $27,000 because we have 2 students that we anticipate. The education spending grant is an increase, but really that's just balancing revenues and investments. The special education reimbursement is down about $29,000, which aligns with lower special education costs. But as you'll see when we talk about expenses, our expenses dropped by much more than $29,000. There won't be a fund transfer in because the bond defeasance account was terminated, but so along with that, the long-term debt or the bond was paid off. So you'll see this big decrease in revenues. You'll see a corresponding decrease in long-term debt when we talk about expenses. All of the other categories summed up, looking at those, was pretty level, decrease of about $1,200. On the investment side, you can see that with salaries and benefits, including shared service, because that's salaries and benefits of U46 employees, salaries and benefit makes up over 82% of our budget. You can see some of the other areas broken out, but they really pale in comparison to salaries and benefits. This chart shows investment changes from the FY16 budget to the FY17 budget. So salaries are up, that's the most significant increase, but it's a 3.2% increase, and that includes staffing adjustments, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Benefits are up 3.5%, which isn't bad at all considering that the health rate increase was 7.9%. You'll see special ed assessment is down significantly, largely attributable to less outside placements that are anticipated based on the service plan. Private preschool slots shows a big increase because of those 40 additional slots. Technology is a nice savings there based on prior year investments, and that debt service, which is where that bond got paid off. But as we showed on that last slide, we lost the revenue that went along with it as well, so it was neutral. So the next few slides are going to show the significant expense changes. I already mentioned salary and benefit costs just within EJ make up over 75% of the budget. So we obviously review staffing very thoroughly. We look at enrollment projections, class size standards, student needs, and the increase that you see here includes staffing adjustments, which are a significant piece of that. Probably about a third or so of the increase is driven by staffing adjustments. And we'll see that on a future slide. Payment to U46 for shared personnel reflects an inflationary increase of about 1.8%. The SU assessment in total was an increase of 2%. The EJ amount was slightly higher than that because it's allocated based on student enrollment between the districts. The special education assessment is decreasing largely, as I said, due to fewer outside placements that are projected. Private preschool, the budget increased there to go from 70 to 110 slots. So with our in-house capacity, that takes us to about 150, and we think that should meet universal access needs, because not every family is going to choose, but that gets us a little over 2/3. So we think that ought to come pretty close. Facility maintenance and projects shows a little bit of a decrease compared to FY16. Some of the projects for each school are listed on this slide. There were inflationary increases for utilities and transportation. The good news was property and liability rates should be level. Information technology, we already talked about the fact that we had a significant increase in investments in technology over the past several years, as you all know. There were a lot of increases and decreases in technology, whether it was hardware or software. But the most significant decrease probably relates to Chromebooks. If we looked at the total number of Chromebooks we bought in FY16 compared to 17, part of that is that we finalized that one-to-one transition for ADL, so we didn't have to buy a whole class full of Chromebooks. Long-term debt, as you can see, is paid off, so that's a decrease that corresponds with the loss of revenue from the bond defeasance. All of the other categories combined show a decrease of about $49,000, and once again, that's looking at equipment, books, supplies, travel, and it's looking at what we actually spent in FY15 instead of looking at what we budgeted in FY16 and trying to figure out what we could really get away with. So we did make some fairly significant decrease there, almost a 10%, probably about 9% reduction. This slide shows the staffing adjustments. The top two lines are special ed related. They actually reflect what we currently have as staffing in our schools. It shows up here because we're comparing the FY16 budget to the FY17 budget, and those requirements were added after the FY16 budget was approved. Based on enrollment projections and class size standards, we do need to add a 6th grade class, which means a classroom teacher and a portion of PE and language based on additional sections that will be instructed. We are shifting a position from a grade 6 through 8 reading specialist to a K through 8 literacy coach, which doesn't change the staffing. You can see the FTE adjustment is 0, but what it allows us to do is pay for part of this position with Title I funds, which is why you see this showing up as a credit. And then there's also a couple lines on here for some reduced stipends, but those are very small adjustments. And the next few slides are going to show estimates of homestead and income sensitivity rates. And I just wanted to kind of caveat this if I haven't stomped my foot enough times. These are estimates that will change. And by change, I mean increase if the dollar yields are lowered. And I do anticipate the dollar yields to be lowered based on less revenue being generated statewide. So They're just estimates. If I knew what the dollar yield was or what the dollar yields were, I would have updated them. Hopefully, we'll have all the information finalized well before we go into informational hearings for the town meeting. The last caveat is, since most households receive some level of income sensitivity adjustment, you really need to look at tax grids to estimate what your individual education taxes are going to be. Those obviously aren't available yet, but hopefully will be ready in time for the informational hearing. So we're going to look at some of those calculations. That top chart was already shown earlier, and that really just shows how we get down to our spending per pupil. The bottom chart shows all the calculations of the tax rate itself. So you take your spending per pupil divided by this dollar yield, and then you multiply it by the base tax rate, which is $1. And then you have to multiply it by the percentage of the kids in Essex Junction who are actually pre-K through 8. And that gives you your actual homestead tax rate. That is adjusted by your common level of appraisal to get the estimated actual homestead tax rate. As you can see here, the property yield that I used was $9,870. That was based on a joint fiscal office estimated that before S233. So that number has to be set by law and will likely change, and by change I mean drop, which means the rates will go up. But as of now, the estimated tax rate is basically level. Technically, it's decreasing 7/100ths of a cent. But I do think that that might switch to a positive. That 7/100ths of a cent gets better whenever you combine it with the grade 9 through 12 tax rates. So here you see that it's almost 7/10ths of a cent now, as it currently is calculated. I have a little call-out box there that shows that that tax rate of $1.56 may increase by maybe 2 cents if the dollar yield is lowered. So that would be enough to switch us from an impact of like $7 lower taxes for $100,000 in property to it might swing us to as much as a $13 increase. So it's taking a very minor savings and changing it into a very minor increase if it does happen, if that dollar yield is decreased. But even if it is, a $13 impact for $100,000 in property is one of the smallest increases I can recall in my 10 years here. Income sensitivity, looking first pre-K through 8. Once again, the chart at the top just shows spending per pupil. Now you're dividing by an income yield of $11,065 for income. That's the number that, of course, is still the big unknown. And as it stands right now, it's showing that the dollar yield or the income sensitivity rate will drop by 0.06%. If that dollar yield drops, that might change a little bit, but it should still be a savings. So the impact shown here for $50,000 in income is a savings of $30. Once again, when you add in the 9 through 12 rate, it's actually a larger decrease. That 0.06 turns into a 0.1% decrease. However, that rate might increase by as much as 0.04 with a lower yield, which would mean a $30 impact instead of a $50 savings for $50,000 in income. So just an important thing to point out on the income sensitivity side is even with a lower dollar yield, income sensitivity rate should go down. I didn't mention it, but one of the reasons why you see in the high school tax rate helping out is that we actually have a larger percentage of kids that are pre-K through 8 this year. So your tax rate doesn't go down as much if you have a higher percentage of kids. So that weighting kind of works against you and works for you from a high school perspective. It balances out, but it makes the pre-K 8 tax rate look not quite as great, and it makes the 9 through 12 look a little better than it should. Looking at the capital fund, so the capital plan has historically been funded by the capital reserve. But to extend the life of that fund, we have approved articles in recent years to collect additional tax revenue. 25,000 in FY15, 50,000 in FY16, and the proposal is 75,000 in FY17. The board asked me to just show FY17 this year because really future requirements will be determined by the Unified Union School Board. The dollar amount is pretty high compared to what we've been spending in prior years, and it will pretty much deplete the capital reserve fund, but we are replacing all 1995 roofs, which is a big deal. And the last time we did that, we had to do a long-term bond to pay that. So using the capital reserve will take care of, will address probably our biggest capital issue, and we'll do it without having to bond for it. A lot quicker to go through the capital plan when you only have 3 items on it. And the first one I already talked about, a roof replacement, replaces almost all of ADL. There's a small section of ADL that was done post 1995. The Fleming addition, which is a big area, and the Summit gym here is all 1995. We do still have some Summit and some of Hiawatha that will be coming up soon, but we can hold off for a few years on those. We do also have some funding for replacement of milk coolers at all schools and some technology infrastructure. And this chart just basically shows the status of the reserve fund. Basically what it's showing is the amount that will be available compared to the actual capital plan should pretty much zero out the fund. I won't go through this slide. It's just a summary of the general fund and the capital plan for the school district. I think we've talked about most of those numbers. And we will shift into the recreation budget, and we'll start with the general fund. We have some context, too, to start out with there. We've been trying to make sure that people understand that we are nearing capacity for most of our programs, which will limit the amount of increase that we're going to be able to generate for program revenue. As a result, that means that we're nearing the end of being able to present a budget with a level tax rate. So this could be the last year where we say level tax rate, but that will remain to be seen. The fund balance is down about $20,000, but it does factor in some one-time investments towards continuing construction of the maintenance garage and covering a deficit from the Aspire Studio, which was in a separate fund but is now part of the general fund budget. That Aspire Studio is also one reason why you'll see some increase in revenue and expense, because we took it from a separate fund and put it right into the general fund now. Licensed childcare, this is probably the final year that we'll have a significant increase there. We may still be able to show some increases, but not as significant as these past few years. So the significant revenue changes, fund balance I mentioned is down $20,000. Property taxes are up slightly. It's really a level tax rate. The reason why it's an increase is we're assuming about a 1% increase in the grand list. Parks, pools, and facilities is fairly level. Youth programs is down a little bit, but may increase if we have additional camps, which we sometimes do offer them based on demand. Adult and senior programs is up. A lot of that has to do with the fact that Aspire programs, the cost and revenue are now in the general budget. Community programs is level. Licensed childcare shows a pretty significant increase based on anticipated enrollment and the fact that summer camps are 1 week longer this year than they were last year. On the investment side, salaries is a fairly significant increase. Staffing increases relate largely to bringing in Aspire, a swim instructor, that additional week of summer camps that I mentioned, and some increase in Village Kids staffing. The benefit increase is in line with salary increase, which makes sense. Travel is down since a cost in FY16 had to do with preschool accreditation, and that only happens every 5 years. Rental of equipment and gasoline is up because we are budgeting for the costs related to 2 buses now. Technology is a bit of an increase to allow for faster internet connection. The SU and shared services are down slightly. Long-term debt goes down each year. The interest amount goes down based on that bond. And then if you look at all the other categories combined, it's pretty level. Looking at the Recreation Capital Fund, once again, we're only looking at FY17 now. Maintenance equipment is the cost related to the lease payment for our replacement truck and tractor. Park amenities has to do with continued efforts related to the maintenance garage and camp room addition, as well as an electronic sign lease. And then we always have landscaping in there for continued landscaping improvements. And then we have our summary for the rec department, which, once again, I won't go through. General fund, we talked about 2.2 million. Capital plan based on 1 cent, so that's an estimate. And then just kind of a, not in language, but just a brief summary of what the articles, budget articles are. The general fund, just under 18.9 million. Capital for 75,000. For the rec department, it's put in terms of the tax revenues on the article, and then the capital is in terms of 1 cent on the tax rate. And then this last slide is just a reminder, the informational hearing will be on Monday, April 11th at 6:30 in the high school auditorium, and then the vote will be the following day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in the high school gymnasium. And I think that's it. Part of the agenda tonight is to approve the budget. I think there are 3 different potential motions that can be taken. I didn't have a motion for the capital plan for the rec department because that's in terms of 1 penny. And so if you're comfortable with the budget, then you can make those motions. And we also have a warning that we can pass around to be signed.
Does anybody have any comments to make on the budget?
Just a good job, Grant.
Yeah.
I want to thank not only Grant and Judy and Deb Anderson, but without a great leadership team that we have in this district, our principals, and Amy Cole, Erin McGuire. We have phenomenal staff, and you all pulled through with these potential cuts that we are faced with, and I think you're making it look easy. You've made it look very easy. It's scary, actually, but you did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for being able to adjust on the fly every time that a new number was being thrown out as far as, you know, what our thresholds were going to be. And never let it get you down too far. So thank you.
I also don't think it's been on camera, but our legislatures, Tim Sherman and Paul Dame, they've done a lot of work, and they have also said that we are very lucky to have Grant, that he has brought a lot of info to Montpelier and a lot of understanding. So probably shouldn't broadcast it because I don't want anybody else wanting to take you away from us.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate your flexibility and patience. And I wish we had that final missing piece. It's really the dollar yields that we're just unsure of. But the good news is we're not going to be changing the budgets. It's just the estimated tax rates. And I think the best thing we can.
In Ways and Means, they're starting the ed rate / yield bill. So there'll be an updated ed fund outlook, which I'll send as soon as I see it, actually, first thing in the morning.
So until then, I think the best we can do is just be open and honest and say, you know, we calculated the rates based on the information we have available to us, and as soon as we have better information, we'll get it out.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so we have Grant laid out some motions for us to make, and I guess I'd like to do the first one, which is make a motion to approve the Essex Junction School District General Fund budget of $18,893,340.
Second.
Second by Jason. Any other discussion? Then all those in favor of the motion for the general fund budget, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Make a motion to approve the Essex Junction School District Capital Fund budget of $466,600.
Second.
Second by Marla. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0.
Your turn.
And a third motion to approve the Essex Junction Recreation and Parks General Fund budget of $2,242,637.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Candace. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you all
Motion
so
passes 4-0. All right.
The warning,
Okay, that fun part's out of the way.
we recommend awarding be read aloud.
All right, so there's a recommendation by the superintendent that we read the warning for the annual meeting and public informational hearing.
Do we do that first, or can we discuss it first?
We of course can discuss it first. Makes much more sense to discuss it before we read it aloud.
I think it's going to be so confusing. This is extremely confusing because we're talking about 1.4% higher, then it's 1.8% higher.
I agree, and I think this is the language we have to use for it.
Is this every bit of the language we have to use?
Yes.
Yeah.
Required by law.
And
Yeah,
so,
under Act 46.
as a further discussion item for us is to talk about how we communicate this budget to everyone, to talk about how the language is going to appear different, what the reason for the language is, and what, the meaning behind the language and those numbers.
It is
I think-
clunky, but it's important to focus on that per pupil spending amount. I just know it's such a shift for people,
Yes.
but that's really the cost driver of their tax rates. But I feel like it hasn't been connecting because we always talk about budgets. So it's just, I think, a shift in culture and in like talking about spending. So it's definitely going to be clunky this year, I'm
Yes.
sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because of our numbers, our enrollment numbers are good.
Right.
Yeah, it does seem a little awkward talking about a budget increase of 1.4%, but a per pupil spending increase of 1.8%. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think the big thing is going to be in our communication to try and help explain what this actually means.
right. Does that help?
Well, it doesn't help. I think
All right.
people, it's going to be extremely confusing when people
No,
go in, and there are going to be people that do not follow front porch forum. You've got a segment of people, when we talk communication, I think it's going to be,
Right.
because you always know you're going to get X amount out that are going to always vote no. 200 to 300, is it? You
Sounds
always
about
know
right.
that, so you've got to draw, other people say, oh, budget's gonna pass without any trouble, so we don't need to turn out. So the communication piece is going to be,
Yeah. And I think we'll all have to work on that together to really
Yeah.
talk about and come up with the best ways we can think of to get that information out there and do the best job we can to explain it, not only for ourselves, but for everyone voting on it. I mean, if we can
Right.
understand it better, I think that will translate into a better explanation to the folks voting.
I think the other confusing thing is the whole change of dollar yield. People have gotten used to saying it after we became Act 60, we did it, now this year you're talking dollar yield. It's just so many changes to the thought.
Clarify.
Yeah.
In an effort to provide more clarity. That's new, learned a bunch of new definitions.
Exactly. It's just change words all
Change
over the
the
place.
focus.
Yeah.
Okay, so with the warning, I always forget what the language for a motion prior to actually reading the warning, or is it to read the warning and then a motion is made to accept what was just read?
Well, you've approved the
Right.
budget articles, so
Yep.
this is just to read the warning.
Okay.
And then to
Then to sign it, okay, because I just thought we had a
Sign it
second
and
action
then,
item, and I wanted to make sure that
authorize
there
us
was.
to post it.
Okay. All right, so here goes. Warning, Essex Junction School District Annual Meeting and Public Informational Hearing, Monday, April 11th, 2016 at 6:30 p.m. The legal voters of the Essex Junction School District in the Village of Essex Junction, Town of Essex, County of Chittenden, and State of Vermont are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Essex Community Educational Center on Educational Drive in the auditorium of said school at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, April 11th, 2016, to take action upon the articles below and thereafter to hold a public informational hearing on the fiscal year 2017 budgets. Article 1, to elect a moderator for the term of 1 year. Article 2, shall the voters of Essex Junction authorize the Prudential Committee to borrow money by issuance of bonds or notes not in excess of anticipated revenues for the next fiscal year. Whereupon, after disposition of said business, said meeting shall be adjourned to the following day, Tuesday, April 12, 2016, when legal voters are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Essex Community Educational Center, Union School District Number 46, in the Village of Essex Junction between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. to vote by Australian ballot on Articles 3 through 8. Article 3, shall the voters of Essex Junction School District approve the school board to expend $18,893,340, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $14,643.33 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 1.4% higher than spending for the current year. It is estimated that this proposed budget and the following article, if approved, will result in total education spending of $14,712.91 per equalized pupil. This projected total spending per equalized pupil is 1.8% higher than spending for the current year. Article 4. Shall the voters of Essex Junction appropriate $75,000 necessary to supplement the Capital Reserve Fund in support of the district's capital plan? Article 5. Shall the voters of Essex Junction approve $635,600 of tax revenues necessary for the support of the Recreation and Parks Department for the year beginning July 1, 2016? Article 6. Shall the voters of Essex Junction authorize the sum equivalent to a 1-cent tax on the municipal grand list for the Recreation and Parks Department Capital Reserve Fund? Article 7. To elect 2 Prudential Committee members, one for a term of 2 years and one for a term of 3 years. Article 8. To elect 2 Essex Community Educational Center Union District Number 46 school directors for each for a term of 3 years. That's it. So, we can go ahead and sign it.
You need a motion?
To approve the warning?
Well, that's what I was asking earlier, if we needed a motion.
It's already.
Well, it wouldn't hurt, I suppose.
Right.
Okay.
so-
You can form
I will move that we adopt and sign the annual warning as read by Michael Smith.
I second.
And second, all those in favor? Say aye.
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 Go ahead and sign. All right, so with that out of the way, I'm tired. Task team updates.
You good to go?
Oh,
Thank you,
and
Grant.
thank you, Grant.
Thank you, Grant.
so much.
See you next time.
Yes, you will.
That's not it, too.
Yeah, I do.
You know, Grant, it's his last Prudential Committee budget. And it's sad in one way, but hopefully you're going to be working on the Unified Union budget or be asked to, correctly?
Fingers crossed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, good to
Thank
see
you. Okay, so I know the task teams haven't been meeting quite as often. Policy,
Thank you.
I know one of the things we've been talking about is limiting policy discussions pretty much to just react to state and federal guidance or changes.
Yeah, or to just update all the policies and bring them current to, you know, this year. Even if that's not really necessarily changing them substantially, just, making sure they conform with any state or federal changes, and just putting them in the best position for the new unified board.
Right.
So that way
Because
they're not dealing with like 1994 policies.
Yes, there are a few of those. And because we know that the unified board is that's going to be one of their tasks is to determine policies.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of pulled back a little bit.
Policy that was approved at first reading at the SU level as far as the English language learners and instructional programs and the law plan.
Yeah, so we did have a first reading for policy, is it
It's
I2?
It's IGBFA and IKEB that got replaced.
Right.
That were replaced.
And that will go through a second reading, I think, at our next
SU
meeting.
board meeting. But if there's any questions on it at the local board meeting, this is time to bring it forward.
And Candace and I, sit on that policy,
Yep.
that committee.
Yeah, we didn't meet in January, but I assume we'll try and meet in February,
Right.
maybe. Yeah.
And then leaders at work. Well, you can give a quick briefing on
Our
that.
last meeting was interesting in that we discussed what the future of our committee would look like. Because we still have to do the superintendent's evaluation for next year. I think part of our discussion was, at this point, with all the work going forward, that possibly the three chairs of the three local boards, the three CSU local boards, can do a lot of that work and be meeting. We're going to try to hold a meeting in March to resolve some other issues of how far we're going to be working, what needs to be accomplished. But at this point, I'll send out an email to everybody and determine if we need to even meet again. We're not doing new board member trainings, which we were responsible for. We're still evaluating the superintendent, but that process has pretty much been, it's much smoother now. We've been 2 years into the process. I think the chairs. I can't think of any other reason we'd be meeting, Judy. We did the annual work plan. We modified that because of the Unified Union School District and the work that the superintendent needs to be involved with. So we tried to take a lot off Judy's plate. So that she can concentrate on some of the Unified Union. And I think we discussed, did we discuss it? We discussed at our Leaders at Work meeting, one of the things we're having to do is come up with a schedule of how we're going to modify our school board meetings. Because we're going to need to eliminate some of the meetings that are no longer necessary. We're starting to go, we'll be going into the last year, and we can start possibly consolidating some of those meetings or doing carousel meetings with the other boards. Did I get it all?
You did. So the purpose of the superintendent's evaluation at the end of the evaluation is the board's offering a contract or not. And so the last contract for CCSU has been offered, and I'm humbly accepting it as we close CSU.
Okay. And the other.
I think for the public to know too, all the CCSU staff, the contracts are good until the start of the Unified Union School District. That's when the current contract will end.
Expire. July 1st, 2017.
So we're just continuing to position ourselves to basically have everything
Dissolve.
closed out.
Yeah.
One other thing we did discuss at Leaders at Work is this year, because we've got to elect board members this spring, and they're going to be closing out the current work, is we were hoping that current board members would run again. And so I'm curious who the two union school reps, one is Brian Donahue
Yes.
and Daniel Tiffs. So I know who on our board we need to put pressure on to run again, but.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I think the stability of the board going forward is so critically important during this time of change, and the expertise and the experience you offer will help guide and support not only the dissolution of the SU, but also the support of the new unified board. So times have changed. You know, we automatically have 16 less meetings for next year just because we don't have budgets.
Right.
So you'll start to see as the year progresses, your work should become less, and we'll have a budget calendar for you to look at during your reorganization meeting, so you can give us input as far as having to consider more carousel board meetings, which we've had in the past, so that we can minimize the amount of time, because I think there's 5 school board members on current boards that are also on the new board, 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So those people, Marla
Right.
being one of them, will be attending not only the SU board meetings, the PC board meetings, but the UU board meetings as well.
Right.
So it's really to accommodate those board members that have stepped up to provide that stability, and I think we're well positioned. So fun.
I suspect the Prudential Committee will be doing quite a bit of work. I don't know if you would have to be there at them, but we're going to be having those talks with the village.
It
And
starts
the Town
next.
of Essex Select
Next week.
Board.
Right, it starts next Tuesday, our meeting to discuss Essex Junction Recreation and Parks with the village trustees and Essex Selectmen and Select Board, I should say. And I think that one of the unintended outcomes of Act 46 is also creating some municipal opportunities to look at ways to merge different programs, and recreation may be one of them. So there'll be much to consider in the weeks and months ahead on that. I think that'll be a really important time to engage community so that they're right on the ground level of trying to understand, as we all will, the pros and cons and opportunities that lie ahead there. So I know we're moving toward communications as your next
Right.
task team, and maybe in addition to after you've successfully passed your budget and your budget communications, you start to think about your involvement with that conversation with Essex Junction Recreation and Parks.
Right.
What's the update on Essex Junction Rex and Park? Is there an update on that
Well, they've
from
been
that advisory?
Yep, they've been meeting. The last meeting was mostly talking about their budget. So kind of everything we've already gone through, they just reviewed their budget going forward. And talking about the need that it's gonna be hard to expand without raising the budget in the future. They're kind of at their limit. That was the main gist of it.
Are they worried about our conversation that's coming up?
They
with
know the
the-
conversation's coming. They seem to want to be a part of it, but I didn't get a flavor of if they were leaning one way or the other in their own mind.
Okay, so we've been notifying them
Yeah,
about the
Brad.
meeting?
Brad knows
has.
about the meeting.
I noticed in the Essex Junction Rex and Parks report that Brad gave us, we had a past staff member at Essex Parks and Rec, and he was phenomenal. It was Ryan, I can't pronounce his last name. He went to Texas, and he was a co-founder of some conference
Yes.
that is being run now.
Yes.
I thought that was exciting because we have staff that goes from here and starts things US-wide.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. So it's been a remarkable program, and hopefully we continue to keep our focus on the children the program serves and our relationships of supporting that going forward, as well as the many senior opportunities and community obligations. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and I'm looking forward to the conversations and the openness that people
Right.
are having going into it. Just keeping it a blank slate in the beginning to have those important conversations.
Well, as we, we've approved the annual warning and budget numbers, we need to talk about communicating that information out to folks. The last couple of years, we've sent out a postcard, mostly as a reminder of folks that here's the date for the informational hearing, here's the date for voting, and here's just a quick rundown of what the articles are
Who
that you're going to be
designs
voting
the
on.
postcard?
Ben does a lot of that.
Feeling. Okay.
Is that our communications director over
Yes.
there?
Yes,
And Dickie.
yes. And, I know, with the change of how the articles are written, that's going to take a lot of communication, and I don't know if that can be done, in a very concise kind of way. I mean, we've we're sitting here looking at these things, and it's still,
It's confusing.
yeah, it
Well, I mean, I still think it's important to send out the postcard to remind folks that it's time to vote.
right, and I
just
think
saying, you're coming here, you're voting on the school budget, here's the dollar amounts of the budget.
Exactly.
We don't put all the language on them this year just because it is a little harder to interpret. But we follow that up with our, either something, if we can put something in the reporter,
right.
and to try and help explain what does the articles mean.
Right, and I think, something that seems to have worked the last couple of years is to basically just break down the budget into parts through the Front Porch Forum, and I'll do that again this year.
Okay.
But in addition to that, I think we need to probably have at least 2, if not 3 different times to appear in the reporter information about the budget itself, about how these articles are written differently, what their meaning is.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to take a look at last year's postcard and then see if there's anything that does need to be changed to reflect
Okay.
these new legislative changes, and also take a crack at drafting something for the reporter too. Yeah, I'm happy. I'll do something like that, and then if Ben wants to send me last year's postcard, I can
Okay.
go from there.
Yeah, I'd like to have something also,
Yeah.
set up on our website where it's just very simple to get to, but lists out, again, more information about how the budget is, how the articles are written and why they're written the way they are, and a little bit of depth into their meaning.
When we do the postcard, we split the cost with Union 46 District.
No, that's when we did the threefold, the flyer,
Okay.
because the postcard is just PC.
It's just for our
believe.
districts.
Well,
Oh,
no,
we
no,
do.
we usually
Oh, we
put-
do
we usually
put
put
that.
both on there.
I'm sorry, apologize, you're right.
Because it's all the same,
Right.
I mean, it's
You're right.
other than the
We have to,
specific
'cause
time
it's
for
a
the
shared
informational
tax
hearing.
rate.
They're at the same place, they're
That's
just one
right.
right after the other.
Yeah.
This year, we're first, and they're second, but
Yeah.
last year it was the other way, but the voting time is,
Yeah.
for everybody in the village is the same, it's in
Right.
the same place,
Yeah,
so.
postcard goes
yeah.
out to all.
Yeah.
Is it possible, you and Brian Donahue, is it possible to get together too, along with Candace? I'm thinking they're going to be in the same situation as to try to explain the changes of the articles.
Yeah.
So it might be worthwhile to do something together with with Brian.
Well, I can reach out to Aaron. Knox had been the one that usually, she and I were the ones that were posting back and forth. We take, just take different perspectives on it and kind of take turns on that. And I can reach out to her again.
Monday, so they'll probably identify someone if Aaron's going to continue.
Okay.
And that'll be good. Then you'll know who you can connect with.
That sounds good.
You think the Essex Reporter would do 2 or 3 weeks of articles?
Probably. Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, I just can't think of a really good reason why they wouldn't.
Yeah.
So, and then the other things, I guess the other part of this is board members. So I grabbed myself a petition to start filling that out.
You let your arm be twisted.
Yeah, I did. But no, I was always going to do it, but I was going to do it just as a write-in. But I thought maybe it'd be better to have it on the ballot. But I don't know what Tim's status is, as far as our other existing board member.
Between France and Singapore.
Right, I know because of his availability. That's so.
Well, you might get somebody new from the.
So if we can, I mean, we'll put it out there
Community.
that there are the two spots. I mean, that whether I'm running or I'm not running, there's still 2 spots that are open for us.
When do you need the petitions in by?
I know it's March something. I don't remember what the date is.
Probably
I don't know if it's on here or not.
Yeah, I was gonna say like a month-ish beforehand.
I know. I got that speech.
I learned the hard way.
Yes.
Coaching going on.
Where do people pick up their petitions now? We used to get them from Lynette Corbin. It's Sue over at the trustees. People could go to the trustees' office.
Yeah, you have to go to the village office.
And get it from Sue.
I learned that this morning too.
Oh, okay.
I went to
the town.
CCSU first. I went to the central office and was turned away.
Change is hard, isn't
It
it?
is. It is. But yeah, I mean, and the other decision is, supposing we do not get a 5th member, we'll have to decide: do we go it with 4, or look for appointing somebody? I mean, that's
Because
a
you're
decision.
closing off operations, so
Right.
to try to do a board training and spend time doing a board training is going to be awkward when we're telling them, you're only going to be here a few months, bye.
Right, and there are a few former members. I don't know what their availability is,
Yeah.
but there are a few former members who, wouldn't require so much
Training.
of the new board member training. And we're going to run into this again next year
That's
to some
right.
extent, because
There you go.
yours and Candace.
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're
Right.
up next year.
Yeah.
And so now that might be a little different if we've got 3 people for sure, and it's just closing out the
Yeah.
The last
you know,
3 months.
Yeah, so I mean, and that's I guess we'll get to that when we get closer to that.
Yeah.
that point in
I'd be
time.
more worried about having quorum with only 3.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it just we don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
When we get closer. Marla's she's going to have a lot of time chewed up this next year. I think.
Yeah.
You know.
It'll be
So.
exciting. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
She's just shifting from the study committee work to the board work.
Well, that's true.
now.
Well, no, I guess I'm a little concerned with making sure we have a quorum even for this next year
That's true.
with her availability, and then
Well, let's see what
Tell you what
happens
this
with the
5th person
vote, and
is.
if we have to, we can make some
Right.
reach out and do the same thing, invite people to send in letters if we don't get anybody by a certain date, and see
We
what
certainly
happens.
have that
Right.
process down, huh?
We have that ready.
right. But so as far as the budget communications, Candace and I will
Okay.
we'll take care of that.
Good.
Do we know on the union school board side if the other 2 members are interested? Because if we have to appoint anybody, it'll be the PC that has to appoint.
Well, in fact, they've got they've got two that are up for election, and then Daniel's, we can only appoint him for a year, right?
Right.
So he has, if
He has to
he
run.
wants
Yeah.
that spot, then he has to run for it
Right.
as well. So there's
Oh,
actually
that's right.
three.
I'll know a little bit more next Monday after I meet
Right.
with U46
Yeah.
to see where they're at.
And then the Unified Union Board, what's interesting is the one-year terms. We've got a couple people on there from the Junction that are only gonna be on there for a year, a little over a year. So there's lots of room for people to be
Mhm.
getting involved in this whole process.
Absolutely. Good point.
Okay. Are we good on that?
Mhm.
Everybody?
Good.
All right,
Thank you,
excellent.
Michael.
Thank you, guys. So let's move on to the consent agenda, which was amended to include an additional leave of absence and the issuance of employment contracts.
Can we, before we even make a motion, can we do a change to December 17th minutes? And then we just do a consent agenda as amended, or
Yeah, I
is
think we
it
can.
better
Pull the
to pull?
minutes
There's a
discuss
motion
them.
in December 17th minutes that, where are they? Where there's a motion that's made by me to go into executive session, and we need to have the time we're going into executive. The time is there, we need to add that
the right
we're
date
going
here.
in for labor relations and contracts. We left the reason why out,
Mm-hmm.
and it's December 17th.
There we go.
Well, that's, and I'm pretty sure it's December 17th. See it, Mike?
Yeah, I see it. We just have moved to executive session, and Tim seconded it, and it was for
Labor relations.
labor relations, right?
And
Teacher
contracts.
contracts.
Okay, so I think we could change that now. I mean, this is just
Minor edit.
it's editing the minutes. I mean, they would have been. Teacher
On the
contracts.
approval of the leaves of absence, when we have staff now that are doing leaves of absence, when they come back, it'll be a unified union district.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who does a leave of absence, when they come back, they're guaranteed a job, but they don't necessarily get a job in the school and in the grade they left, correct?
Well-
That's something I'd be curious that we look at.
Well, this said we're filling it with a long-term supplemental.
Right, we're just subbing this position, all three of these positions. So I'm anticipating they're gonna return to their positions.
To the exact same positions.
One's a very specialized position, as far as, world language teacher is concerned, so we wouldn't open and advertise unless there's something that unexpectedly happens.
I just didn't know if they had to worry about when they come back, whether they'll have the exact same thing or if they could potentially be moved.
I think our intention would definitely return them to their current position unless there's something unusual.
And one of them, unless I read it wrong, will be back for the next school year.
For the next-
Correct.
Oh, yes,
Correct,
correct.
yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Because there's different reasons for the leaves.
Okay, I think if that's everything, I just
Mm-hmm.
need, anybody want to attempt the motion?
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda with the approval of warrants and approval of the meeting minutes as amended of 12/7/15, 12/17/15, 1/5/16, 1/18/16, and 1/28/16, and approval of 3 leaves of absence and an issuance of employment contracts.
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Candace. Any last minute, just thought about discussion?
I would just add that you need to include in your motion the name of the teachers that you'll be
Oh,
recommending.
that's right. We didn't used to. And in the motion, the leaves of absence are, one is Victoria Anelli
Mhm.
from the Spanish teacher at A.D. Lawton. And the other one is, Beth Dahl Taylor.
Mhm.
And June?
Jean Cole.
Jean Cole, here
Okay.
at Summit Street.
Thank you for that. No other discussion? Then all those in favor of the consent agenda as motioned by Marla and seconded by Candace, say aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0. All right. So what are we up to? Community?
Communication.
All right. So are there any other topics of any more items that need to be communicated out to the community? As far as a review of today's meeting to be sent out via Front Porch. I know Tim just sent out the one from our final budget meeting.
He just sent out that info, and then I think whatever you decide to do on the budget
Right.
and explaining that will be out there. I think the community communication would be important to get out after our meeting with the trustees and select
Okay.
board next
Mhm.
week,
Next
is
week,
it?
Tuesday?
Yes.
Next Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would tend to think that meeting, we may want to talk about what we're going to put out after that meeting.
Okay, that's good.
idea.
Is that,
Yeah.
That's reasonable.
Okay. That's a good suggestion.
I think it'd be a little redundant to put another one out about budget right now until
Right.
we have more knowledge.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, and we did cover, I mean, a lot of what we think we want to put out there and how we're going to go about it. Okay. Future agenda items. So we're going to be
Definitely
hiring a
Essex
principal.
Junction, Rex and Park,
Yes.
potentially Park Street School.
Our next meeting is at ADL.
That's correct.
Oh, Lori's retiring. Are we doing something,
What a lovely idea.
something special for Lori Singer?
Yeah.
Oh, at the meeting?
At the meeting?
Yeah, I think
With her
that'd be-
staff there, that'd be very nice.
Oh, yeah. That'd be nice
Very
to do.
thoughtful.
Is there something we normally do? We usually get some gifts or a gift certificate.
And we try to get some gifts, present, an apple.
Golden apple. I can have that engraved for you if you'd
That'd be
like
great.
for the meeting.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
So you could
Um,
present it that night.
If we could, if it's appropriate to put together something from the, some food items,
Sure.
I don't know.
Cake.
Yeah.
Yeah, cake is nice.
Some refreshments, maybe we'll get other people to come too.
That's right.
If we have refreshments out. Maybe Suzanne will come.
Not to put you on the spot.
That's right. Because I know we did that for when Mary retired. We did a little bit of something here.
That was nice.
Yeah.
So,
Usually the clerk used to pick up cards for us to sign on stuff like this, or does the clerk want me to do it?
If you want to do it, I won't stop you. But I'm also happy to do it.
Oh, wait, who's doing it?
Yeah.
You're doing it?
I'll do it.
Okay, you'll do
I'll
it.
do it.
okay.
Thank you.
And I'll get it to Ben, so that we can stop over and sign it, or we can sign it that day.
Or if you get it early, we can sign it next Tuesday.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's right, that's right. Do we have to suggest an amount that we spend if we're going to do something special for Lori? Do we, or just within reason?
I think in the past you've authorized not to exceed
Like
numbers.
200?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Do we have to make a motion for that?
No,
No.
no.
It's
Just-
understood.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
If we haven't talked about it though, Grant won't let us do it, so.
No, it's amazing how much power he has, isn't it?
Yeah. He knows all the numbers.
Grant's very tight with those purse strings.
He is.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything.
Okay.
Surely want to remind the board that Friday night at 5:30, we're having the Stream of Lights parade.
Oh, thank you.
And it's going to be a fabulous event. All the art teachers across all 10 schools who are building lanterns with students made of willow twigs and coffee filters, and it's an out-of-this-world parade theme. So you'll see a lot of outer space, and there'll be bands, and you've seen notices in the paper where we're having the streets closed. There'll be shuttle buses from St. James Episcopal Church, and then overflow parking will be at the fairgrounds.
Okay.
Your community has done an amazing job of supporting this effort.
Nice.
Essex Police, the Champlain Valley Expo, Tim Shea, along with your maintenance crew, and security will be supporting. Art teachers can't even begin to tell you the time they've dedicated to this. They've had some very fun community events too, where parents have come in and made lanterns with their kiddos. So I'm really excited. The bands will be playing from Essex High School. There'll be hot chocolate and cookies made by CTE, and some garbage can fires to keep us warm, because of course that's the night that the cold
It's gonna
front's
start getting
moving in.
cold. Yeah, exactly.
But it should be a huge community event to celebrate the unification of our districts, and also to bring some light during the dark period of time of winter. So hope to see you there.
Cool.
And what time does that start?
It begins at 5:30, but I've been telling people 5,
Okay.
just because I'm trying to think about all the traffic. You know, there will be parking at our schools if you're looking to get closer, and don't need a shuttle bus kind of service. I'm just recommending down hats and mittens
Right.
so you stay warm. It's supposed to be a really cool night.
And I have one alibi. One thing I forgot to mention is that Ben reminded me that I need to get the director's report for the annual report in by Friday.
Friday
Thank you, Ben.
It's the 19th?
You just gave him a whole nother week?
Excellent. Well,
Friday, what's the day?
next Friday. Okay. So,
Yeah. Annual
anything
report.
you guys would like to remind me to
I
include?
sent you my reminder,
I know.
right? Did you keep it?
I don't know if you sent it to me. You talked about it. I can't remember if you sent me something though.
I thought I sent out an email.
But I'll look. If you send it to me, I have it.
Okay.
I've got like a bazillion emails. I don't delete anything.
I suggested that a dedication to Lynette Corbin,
Mhm.
who was with the district for 30 years. And I suggested that we thank some community members that were important to the start of the unified union.
Right.
Nice, nice.
Starting with community leaders like George Tyler and
Right.
the select board and all those people. It was like a joint effort. I think it's a very important thing. Everybody started with heart and soul too.
Yes.
You know, just
So if
went
you-
right down through.
If you guys have thoughts along those lines, beyond what Marla's already sent me and talked about right now, just please let me know by Friday, so I have time to then incorporate them and get everything back to Ben in a timely fashion.
Well, it's interesting when you do the director's report, the principals all do their piece.
Yeah.
And then the superintendent does their piece, and it seems like the board of, our board chair, seems to me, doesn't need to recite
Right, and that's what I've started
what
doing
they've
actually the last
done,
couple of
so,
years, is to
yeah, I thought it was nice what you did
change the
last
focus a
year.
little bit.
Yeah.
I thought that was excellent what you did.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, if we have nothing else, we are adjourned.